Hello everybody, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope you've enjoyed the festivities. Welcome to my end of the year roundup for every game I have streamed during the year of 2023. It's been a very dense year for the streams, with lots I want to look back on and think about now that things are wrapped up. So without further ado, let's begin. This game was a wild ride from start to finish. Janky as hell, but all the more charming because of it. Hundreds of guns, thousands of bugs, and a lady in my ear who calls me Studmuffin. The borderline grim-dark tone gets very strange towards the end, but I'd say the game earns it, with the constant feeling that you are triumphing over impossible odds, does give it a strong cathartic payoff, and blowing shit up with your friends is a magnificent experience all around.
Democracy is non-negotiable.
Lost Planet has always been a bit of a weird franchise, every game being wildly different from the last. But Lost Planet 2 feels like there's a definite diamond buried in the rough. With the multiplayer horde shooter genre being so popular these days, I think you could do something fun with mechs versus kaiju as a selling point. Alas, we'll likely never get it, and we're stuck with this game, which is sadly showing its age, and with a tone that is massively at odds with its own premise. How the fuck did I never play this game sooner? I don't know, but I've played it now, and it's put a desperate craving for more in my mind that I cannot seem to scratch. Some of the systems are a little outdated, with things like the fighting game combo special attacks, and having to equip healing items to the offhand, rather than just using them from the menu. But the game itself is a classic, and rightfully created a genre all its own. What can I say about this game that has not already been said? Every creative I know has had an idea like this, myself included. And Tango Gameworks not only made it, but delivered an absolute stealth hit with no marketing. Genius premise, tight controls, beautiful environment, and a banger soundtrack. S rank, no question. Another cult classic that I never got around to playing, but I did have distinct memories of playing the demo. This game was weird. At its core, it's a fairly thin stealth beat-em-up based around uncovering a conspiracy, but the stealth basically just amounts to hiding behind boxes, and the combat is a single-button mash fest, and the conspiracy's meaningless. Then you fly to the moon, fight Cthulhu in a bullshit boss fight, and the game just ends. What?! I was genuinely worried about them remaking Resident Evil 4, and this is coming from the guy who genuinely enjoyed the RE3 remake. But Resident Evil 4 blew every worry out of the water from the word go, beautifully modernising a classic title in a way that doesn't just replace the original. It's its own beast now, and a shining example of the genre that the original game basically created. Lament of Innocence is not a bad game. I will say that right out of the gate. It's a perfectly competent 3D brawler, but there's no reason for it to be called a Castlevania game. The areas are linear, there's no exploration abilities, just a few painfully easy puzzles and doors that you get the key for in other areas and then come back for later. If they hadn't called it Castlevania, it probably would have just been totally forgotten, but instead it is merely perplexing. I came into Curse of Darkness kind of expecting a hidden gem. I'm very fond of the Netflix series, and this is the game that the series was adapted from. But then again, the areas are linear, there's very little reason to explore, there's two abilities in the whole game that actually aid in exploration, the glide and the magic portal, and the rest are just required to open the one door that's preventing you from moving on. In theory, the crafting system is intended to encourage exploration, but unless you obsessively use steel on every enemy in the game, you don't know what you can or cannot upgrade, and you'll reach the end of the game grossly underpowered and have no idea why. The first Plague Tale game was an out-of-nowhere hit, with a surprisingly good story and some genuinely gruesome horror moments. So, when I came into this game and witnessed Amisha's descent from traumatised former noblewoman into screaming madness, the loss of basically everyone she cares about, and the escalation of the rat plague into biblical apocalypse, it really struck a nerve with me. This part in particular of trying to save the herbalist, I took about 4 attempts, becoming increasingly stressed, before finally accepting defeat. Shit hurt. Can't wait for the third. This right here is why I love the indie circuit. You would never be able to sell fishing game with Lovecraftian horror undertones on a AAA scale, but these guys did it. A constant feeling of creeping dread that comes to a crescendo of beautifully unanswered questions. Very importantly, understanding that cosmic horror lives and dies and the fear on the unknown. And being a humble angler lost amid the fathomless madness is the perfect POV. And it's got the Resident Evil 4 Tetris inventory.
Where's all the bloody COD gone?
In the immortal words of Cadicarus, what the fuck is this game? 3 2-hour story campaigns stapled together with a tissue-thin plot that barely connects them. I can understand how this would make sense on paper, to make a separate campaign for the Marine, the Alien, and the Predator. But they just don't have enough room to grow. There's just enough mechanics here to make the campaigns interesting on their own, and all that I'm left with is a painful yearning to see one of these blossom out into its own thing. Take this from someone who doesn't generally like Pokemon. This is the best Pokemon game I've ever played. This game was a ton of fun from start to finish. It took on the Titan of Nintendo and I feel like it won. Rewarding exploration, diverse roster, actual tactical depth instead of just type advantage or levels, and a delightful art style. And just this one little ability to mark things off on the map with proper text input. This is a video game made by people who love video games. Hey, quick shout out to Casey Explosion on Twitter. It's through them that I discovered this game and Dredge. Once again, it took one whole tweet to sell me on this game, in which the developer pitched it with 2 lines of text and a GIF. The best thing I can say about this game's combat system is that it never felt like the game was at fault when I died. Usually you can point to something and go, oh that's bullshit, but not here. The combat and movement system is so tight and well balanced that every failure feels like a learning point. And just getting around with these air dashes and wall runs feels so good. I play a lot of old games on these streams where I look at them and I can at least point out 1 or 2 mechanics or systems that don't hold up to modern eyes. Not so here. Aria of Sorrow's controls are basically flawless, and the only real problem this game has is functionally a bug. The grind that the game is infamous for is basically because the luck stat is bugged and doesn't influence drops. That's it. Hey, Netflix, if you're gonna do another Castlevania series after Nocturne, maybe do Aria? Call me? 10%? How the hell we never got a Warhammer Boomer Shooter before now is beyond my understanding, but Boltgun nails every aspect. Malum Kaido is such a stereotype for the plot-armoured Ultramarine meme, but the game takes it and runs with it, revelling in the absurdity of it all. But most importantly, nails the serious elements like the visual style and the sound. There's even a pixel crunch setting, so you can really sell that came on a floppy disk feel. Extra special shout out to Rahul Kohli for voicing Kaido. Man's got lungs like brass. I've always been amused by anime worlds that revolve entirely around a single premise, like how everything in the universe of Beyblade is centered around spinning plastic tops, so I was ready to enjoy Battle Chef Brigade. What I wasn't expecting was a extremely frantic puzzle platformer match 3 game. The energy this game has as you sprint around trying to gather up ingredients while also remembering what the judges want and how best to achieve it. I'm not too proud to admit that this game made my brain short circuit once or twice. The few complaints that I do have, like the kitchen upgrades being limited to 3 so you have to settle on a build that doesn't really change, the slow cooker being kind of overpowered, and some of the story chapters being out of order, just make me really want a sequel so we can see what this premise is really capable of. Arguably the precursor to the recent slew of boomer shooters, a classic throwback to the days of Doom clones with this high fantasy Boris Vallejo aesthetic. The game only loses out to Boltgun on a few minor points. The environments, while pretty, just aren't as interesting as Boltgun, and the music is a bit too subdued for a game where you have a staff that can throw planets at people. It's an attempt to recreate the games of the mid to late 90s with modern tech, and honestly there's nothing wrong with that. If Konami ever chose to came crawling back to video game development, this should be the game that all future Castlevania titles should take from. There is a damn good reason why this game was the base for so many spiritual successors. It's basically Aria, but better, more detailed graphics, more interesting exploration, higher fidelity, and an interesting plot with fun characters. I genuinely don't know what more I can ask for besides taking out the kinda needless DS3 mechanics. This game's a deceptive one, kids. The main story campaign clocks in a respectable 20 hours depending on your personal capacity for exploration. But then you find out there's a second story quest for every region in the game, and more side areas besides, and they're adding DLC! The sheer amount of stuff that is in this game, and hidden just enough to make seeking it out feel really rewarding, is bottomless. Beware, you'll be here a while if you get invested. Joyous be the heart-penitent ones! A wise man once said fidelity is temporary but design is forever. And whoever came up with the idea of basing this game's design on Spanish Catholic guilt-mongering, then packed it full of very specific art history references, deserves a fucking medal. Oh, and lest we forget the incredible soundtrack, surgically precise combat, excellent exploration mechanics. My only complaint is that some elements of the story are a little confusing, with some stuff not being explained very well. But didn't I say that good horror should not explain everything? Rest now, penitent one. You've earned it. Let me tell you a story. The first ever Comic Con I went to, there was a burger van at the venue selling a cheeseburger for 10 quid. No salad, no chips, no drink. Just a burger with cheese. I turned to my friend and said, for £10, that had better be the best burger I have ever tasted. And you know what? Penny larceny is that burger. From a simple core concept of being the broke hench person of moustache-twirling supervillains, it's threaded through a very colourful series of characters, scenarios that I was instantly in love with. It's a little on the short side at 2 to 4 hours per playthrough, but the overarching meta plot of multiverses collapsing and an egotistical prick trying to create his perfect world, this is the best damn burger I've ever had. Another game from the files of I saw one tweet and was sold. From the broadest possible view, this game is a tech demo for a combat system. But that's fine. I've played glorified tech demos before. So what sets this game apart from the likes of Black? Smoking, sexy, style. Take a combat system not unlike Sekiro based on Errol flinning your way to victory and stretch that to its logical conclusion. Kicking people downstairs, flattening them with a chandelier, or giving them a soup cauldron straight to the dome. Capped off with an adorable sword lesbian protagonist, and you've got a delicious 3-hour snack of a game where I didn't stop grinning for its entire runtime. And did I mention this game was basically someone's university project? The things this game had to go through just to get made is almost legendary. In development for over a decade, and then allegedly only limped out of the door. But what we got was a great experience. Gameplay wise, it's a fine shooter, if a rather thin one. 3 guns, 3 enemy types, no boss fights, but the use of light, its themes and its story, and some of very strong visuals has got me very excited for the second one when I get around to it. There's something about Eastern Europe that means they do very good horror games that are just bleak. Not the snarling monstrosities of American horror, or the symbolism-drenched Japanese horror, it's just sad. But Metro Exodus uses that sadness and subverts it. Yeah, everything sucks, but if we can just make it to the end, there's a chance things can be better. And Shambler, my beloved. Spyro has a very special place in my heart, so be warned that my remarks will be biased. I was torn between this and Dawn of Sorrow getting the Holy Shit 2 Cakes award, because that's exactly what Spyro is. Each game is basically the last one, but more and better. The first game is a perfectly good platformer with some laughable voice acting, the second game added a proper story and some better sound design, and the third is no doubt the peak of that kind of design. A simple, linear increase in quality. Somebody pointed out to me that the Crash games had already been and gone by the time Spyro 1 came out, and that still baffles me. All around, the Crash games are a strange bunch. Styled like a kid's 90s TV show, but mercilessly difficult, asking for some very precise platforming and secret hunting out of what was basically a game for 9-year-olds. It's fun, and the energy is just wild, but the frustration builds up very quickly. I think I only did as well in the third game as I did because I played it a lot as a kid. And that's the end of it. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my ramblings. Here's to 2024 having even more great games. See you next time, good night, and much love.